All right. Well, good afternoon. It is 1 o'clock, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. This is Brad Robinson from Liberty Technology Advisors. I want to thank you guys for joining us today for our webcast, 3 Keys to Getting the Most Out of Your Future State. Today, we are going to be joined by LTA Senior Consultant Mike Walker. Mike is Six Sigma Belt certified and Lean Six Sigma Sensei certified. He's been a lead industrial engineer as well as a North American Quality Improvement Manager. You can see a little bit more of Mike's experience on the screen here. And more importantly, Mike's a member of the LTA Business Processes team, so he is more than qualified to help us talk today about those 3 keys for getting the most out of your future state. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Mike and let him go ahead and walk us through this. Good afternoon, Mike.
Good afternoon, Brad. Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. The $5 check is in the mail. Thank you everyone for joining us today, joining the webcast. Let's go over the agenda for the webcast today. So we're going to talk about what are the 3 keys for getting the most out for your future state. But first, we're going to talk about what is the purpose of business process reengineering and how that leads to your future state. We will go into the 3 keys for getting the most out of your future state, and as well as provide some case studies, recent case studies of BPRs that we have done that further accentuate how the 3 keys kind of drive the future state. Then we'll do a quick summary, and hopefully we'll have some questions at the end. So before we go into the keys in and of themselves, let's talk a little bit about the purpose behind business process reengineering, or as BPR, as we like to call it. First is to understand your future state requirements, providing the foundation to migrate and optimize processes to for the further success of your business, so that for your scalability and overall operational excellence. Build quality and flexibility into those processes. Develop and maintain documentation for those business processes. That's all a part of standardized work and being able to train people and identify out of process conditions when building those business processes. Facilitate continuous improvement of process and practices. So the future state is just the start of your process improvement journey, which will help facilitate further improvements down the line. And then and as we allude to the 3 keys, here's the crux of the whole thing that leads into your future state. It's the alignment of people, process, and technology. Those 3 elements, those 3 aspects, those 3 keys for a full implementation of the capabilities and functionality of your ERP solution. Minimize outside processes and systems, such as doing things in Excel or all these other ancillary systems instead of one centralized system. And your foundation for scalability, being able to grow your business without having to throw all these additional resources as your business grows. So as I alluded to, the 3 keys that we want to focus on for integration, alignment, and optimization are people, process, and technology. People, process, and technology. If you only focus on the alignment of people and technology, you will get some innovation. However, if you focus on technology and process, you'll get some automation, some true ways to automate your processes to make them more robust. If you integrate and align people and process, you can get scale with your business. But you want to really drive all 3 of these at the same time from an alignment, optimization, and integration perspective, so that you get full innovation, scale, and automation that gives you an ultimate win for your business. So let's go into each one of these elements and talk about how do we optimize each one of these elements? What are we looking for to implement these elements as we build our BPRs for our future state? So the importance of people within BPR. Leverage an experienced facilitator for setup and execution. That helps to drive direction. It helps to give the overall impetus to the conclusion of getting to your next future state. Typically, a person from the outside can help with that. Sometimes from an internal perspective, it's easier for people to rely on a diplomatic facilitator to help with driving those processes and those practices. Ensure the right people are part of the BPR. You want them to be cross-functional. You want them to represent the beginning and end of your business so that we can get a full-scale understanding of where your current state processes flow, how they flow, and how we can improve them in the future state. Typically, we'd want somewhere between 5 to 10 people, which is manageable for these type of sessions. And you want to have the ability to bring in, for more detailed processes, subject matter experts as necessary to help give some color commentary or improvement or more detailed perspective of those particular processes. Making sure they're dedicated and committed. They are part of that overall organizational change management, if you will. One key area here is making sure the same team members are part of both the current and future state development. We have seen in the past where folks who have not been involved in the current state, if they do come to the future state, they tend to derail the overall momentum of the future state process building. So we want to make sure that we stay consistent all the way through from current to future state. And obviously we want the people to be empowered. We want to make sure that management empowers the team to deliver effective BPR outcomes for the organization as part of the change management and implementation of those business processes. And they are allowed to be open and honest in order to drive improvement for the organization. That is actually one of our key rules when one of our business rules that we set up during the facilitation portion of these sessions is that you have to be open and honest. There are no penalties here. That helps us get to problem solving. It's not people solving, it's problem solving, process solving. Now let's talk about the importance of process within BPR, which of course is one of the letters in and of themselves. The current state review. During the current state review, you want to look at the major processes within your organization, whether it be quote to order to cash, plan to produce, and procure to pay. Those are typically the major areas that should be focused on in a business process reengineering effort. However, there are other key processes such as quality, detailed accounting processes, HR, that organizations tend to want to delve into as well, that would migrate ultimately into an ERP system. And so we also just talk about those as well to get a full understanding of where we are in the current state processes. We identify waste steps for areas of improvement. We identify those in a different color so we can call those out and be able to tackle them and make sure that they are removed in the future state. And as well as we also try to identify tribal knowledge, meaning knowledge that is not written down, that is not a standard operating procedure, that is in someone's head, so that we can make sure that we systematize that knowledge and make sure that it becomes a standard process that is actionable both from a people standpoint and a technology standpoint. Future state review. So as we discussed, the current state is identification of these things in the future state. We want to remove the waste steps and streamline the processes within the future state. Again, systematizing that tribal knowledge, making sure we have standardized procedures and actionable events within the ERP system. And we do not allow the selected system to constrain improvement ideas. What do we mean by that? We always consult to our clients that when we start these sessions, they have no idea at that particular time what the new system will do for them. So what we advise is, irregardless of whatever system you choose, what do you want your business process to be in the future from a best practices standpoint? That helps them cut down all the constraints of what they currently know with their current systems and current processes, and helps them build that very streamlined future state process that is actionable in the system, so that they're putting a good process in a new system, avoiding the pitfall of putting poor processes in a new system. And then technology within BPR. Ensure the right VAR is selected with the right solution for the organization. We here at LTA have very good tools in helping our clients select the correct value-added reseller or ERP implementer, if you will, with questionnaires, creation of functional requirements, demonstrations. We help manage the demonstrations with the selected vendors, and we help with the selection and ranking of those vendors so that the client makes the best decision for their organization based on the tools and techniques that we provide to help facilitate that process. Ensure that the VAR attends current and future state sessions. The major benefit of the VAR's involvement is the detailed creation of the requirements document based upon future state processes, not current state processes. This is key from the standpoint of the VAR is hired to implement a system. They traditionally are not there to help improve your processes per se. So they will implement what you give them and implement it well within their system. The key is making sure you give them, the client is actionable to giving them the best processes possible to implement in a timely fashion. So let's bring this home with a couple of different case studies. I had the opportunity a few months ago to work with the ebook company. And the issues that we're facing from a people standpoint, it's a small organization, 30 people total, questioned if it was even a good time for them to have a BPR. It was toward their year end, very small organization, already taxed with day-to-day operations. From a process standpoint, they had several manual processes associated with the AR. With AP and AR, the lack of visibility of inventory and valuable work streams was processed manually with extensive tribal knowledge. So they actually had a business sector within their organization that was totally managed by two individuals that had basically the processes in their head. And it was a very valuable, it was a revenue growing work stream for them. So that was of concern. From a technology standpoint, it was just an arduous time creating reports, and as well as it was just a non-integrated solution that they had on premise at that time. So as far as the BPR session was concerned, we had 5 cross-functional people in the session, but the key was whenever they ran into a roadblock of a detailed area that they did not understand, they took time out to bring the SME in as needed to help with facilitating that portion of the discussion. Why that was key for them was it helped them balance being able to participate actively in the BPRs and still was able to get done with day-to-day business. So that was huge. From a process standpoint, we spent 1 week during the current state, documented all areas for improvement in tribal knowledge, and then we spent 1 week in the future state, and which special attention paid to the revenue growing work stream that they had that was growing for them, that we had to make sure that we captured as much as possible in that current state so we can actually standardize that in the future state. From a technology perspective, the VAR was very participative in that portion in both the current and future state sessions. Special session was created as well for dashboards and reports, which was a huge pain point for the organization. So that was key to have that special session based on a knowledge of the VAR as to what was possible from a dashboards and reports standpoint. So the outcomes, the participants were engaged, empowered, and committed to the improvement. One of the quotes I love to give from this was, there was one person who initially was very hesitant on participating in the BPRs. And she had mentioned that, she thought those sessions were actually going to be quite horrible because they were going to be too time consuming for her. But it was a much better experience than she had expected. And we were very glad to hear that at the end of the second week of BPR. From a process standpoint, we reduced, streamlined, and improved processes from the current state to the future state. We initially started with 23 processes in the current state and reduced those down to future state. The most important outcome from a process standpoint was we took that revenue growing area that was initially tribal knowledge and was able to systematize it, process flow it, and actually get it into a work stream that could be implemented within their ERP system. So that was awesome. From a technology standpoint, the VAR was able to give very high level guidance on functionality as needed throughout the sessions. And they were also able to create their requirements documentation based on future state processes ahead of time. They were actually very appreciative of participating in the sessions to get started on that documentation. And that was one of the first times they've actually participated in such a activity. So they were very appreciative to be a part of it and gave very positive comments on that. So as we all know, all of us working as long as we have, we know that everything doesn't necessarily work out exactly the way we want to, but it's all about continuous improvement. So I also wanted to provide a case study, a situation where the initial outcome may not have been the greatest, but it has improved over time. So recently we've been working with a manufacturing company. From a people standpoint, it's a multinational group. Also coordination was a big issue as far as the BPR was concerned. So we actually had to have it with the US contingent versus the international contingent, and just had webinars or webcasts meetings to get them up to speed on how the sessions went from the previous days. The VAR consultants' engagement during the BPRs was a little bit of an issue, more so from a timing perspective and an attendance perspective. They weren't as participative as we would have typically like in a BPR session, if you will. There was extensive resistance to change throughout the organization, not with the people who attended the BPRs, but just the organization in general. So I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more in the upcoming slides. From a process standpoint, they had very disjointed processes, and they wanted to remove and totally eliminate their current state, which was good news and bad news, because you have to understand where you're starting from in order to improve. I like to look at it like Google Maps. Google Maps is always going to ask you where your starting point is, whether it be your current location or wherever you want to start from. And the same thing with BPR. You have to understand where you're going, where you came from, in order to understand where you're going to see if there is improvement. And then technology, organization outgrew the overall ERP system. So that was the issues that we were facing with this particular BPR. So as you notice, the title of this slide says Future State 1. This is alluding to, was an iterative future state process. So we'll talk about Future State 1 first. We had from a people standpoint, we had 7 cross-functional leaders involved who actively participated and can help with change management. So although the organization faces some major hurdles in regards to organizational resistance to change, they did identify 7 cross-functional leaders who are change agents. And I think they will be successful overall over time to make change within their organization and overcome their roadblock of organizational resistance to change. The process, we spent 1 day reviewing the current state, and that took a lot of negotiation to make that happen, because they were adamant they did not want to understand what the current state was, but it was imperative for us to understand that to help really drive what the future state can look like. We spent 1.5 weeks on the future state. The client was happy from a people and process standpoint. From a technology standpoint, the VAR was not very active during this first round, if you will, of the BPR sessions due to attendance or doing other activities during the sessions. Client was happy though with the performance of the software. So they were happy with the partner that they picked. They were happy with the software solution that they picked. And then after this session, they spent several weeks coming up to speed on the system, learning various different aspects of the system per their roles and responsibilities. So then they reached back out to us very recently to do a second round of BPR, if you will. This is the first time that I've been involved since being with LTA to do such a second round of activity in this early stage, because they wanted to really get a further drill down of their baseline future state, which we did in that 1.5 week session, and then put detailed action items associated with their future state, and as well as raise the alignment and integrate and optimize the process and technology areas. From the process standpoint, they wanted to do action items associated with what they need to do at a more detailed level to execute their future state within the system. And as well as now they're able to get their international contingent up to speed on all of the BPR decisions that were made previously. And now they're all on the same page. And as well as getting the IT partner aligned now with this future state, now that we're beginning to see some of the transactions associated with the system. So from a process standpoint, we spent 3 days on a more detailed state. And technology-wise, the VAR participation was much more active in this round. We were able to actually implement some of the terminologies that the VAR's system uses within their future state. So the outcomes, participants were very engaged, empowered, and committed. The international contingent was now on the same page, which was huge this time around. From a process standpoint, the initial future state from round 1 was a great framework for round 2. What do I mean by that? What was very good for me to see and I think for the people who were involved in the first round of the future state, was that we did not throw away anything that was created without system knowledge. We were system agnostic initially with the future state. We were able to take that future state and drill down further, which was awesome. So that was really good to see that the future state really was valid. It was what they want. It is best practice, standard practices, based on standard practices within the ERP systems. And now they're just adding action items associated with it. Client now feels more ownership of the process flows. So now they've taken those process flows and now they are the ones who will be changing them going forward to suit their needs as part of that continuous improvement efforts going forward as they implement their system. And then from a technology standpoint, although the VAR participation was minimal in the first round, with increased participation in the second round, the project now has better alignment. So in summary, building for BPR for building the future state helps to provide the foundation to migrate and optimize processes to further the success of the business, build quality and flexibility into those processes, develop and maintain documentation on business processes, and facilitates continuous improvement, improvement of processes and practices. The keys for the future state must be the alignment and integration and optimization. When you look at people, process, and technology, you can look at it as three legs of a stool. If any one of those legs are short, the stool will tip over if you try to sit on it. If there's any one of those legs are removed, the stool is almost impossible to sit on. It actually becomes somewhat of a crutch, if you will. So if one is out of alignment, the stool cannot give any support. So again, it is the integration, optimization, and alignment of all three areas. Fully implement capabilities and the functionality within your ERP system so that you don't come with implementing your current state, but your future state, so that in 5 years or how many years down the line, you don't blame the system for inefficiencies. You actually are able to leverage the system to its fullest capabilities. Remove and minimize outside systems and processes within your future state and provide that foundation of scalability. Again, be able to work on value-added activities to grow your business so you're not adding additional resources, driving up internal costs within your organization. That's all I had for today. Brad, do you have any additional comments or issues?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Mike. I think what we'll do now is open it up for Q&A. And while you feel free to submit those questions either via the Q&A portal or the chat portal, and we will go ahead and answer those. Before we do, I just want to quickly tell you about Liberty Technology Advisors. We are a 100% independent consulting firm. Our team of consultants are experienced individuals with 20 years experience. So we definitely know what we're doing and aren't afraid to get in there and roll up our sleeves and do the work with you. Just a quick look at our services. We do offer ERP and enterprise software selection, implementation, as well as active project management. What Mike was talking about today, business process reengineering and execution, as well as technology advisory services such as interim CIO, cloud strategy, IT, roadmaps, and value-added services like project rescue, organizational change management, training support, etc. So with that, I do want to open it up. It looks like we have had a couple questions come through. So please, if you have any others, please continue to submit those. But Mike, the first one we had come through is, you mentioned a lot about documenting processes within an ERP. Do you also document processes that occur outside of other systems, maybe manual, paper, etc.?
Yes, as we go through the process flows for the client that we are working with, we try to call out all of those external processes, procedures, paperwork, those type of things. People are doing things in Excel or in QuickBooks or things of that nature. We try to make sure that that is captured so that the more of that that's captured on the front end in the current state, the more we can work on how to get everyone as close to a one system solution as possible and what should be integrated within that solution. and then try to, again, minimize as much as possible some of the external processes or systems, paperwork, et cetera, that is currently going on within the current state. So we do try to document that, as much of that as possible. And it's all about the deliverable for the client, whatever the client, whatever helps to make that client more effective and efficient in the future. That's what we try to do with it from a BPR perspective.
Great. Next one we have here is, you talked about the VAR being involved in the BPR sessions, which means the system has been selected. Does it make sense to do BPR before selection so that you select the ERP system against future state requirements? And if you do that, then do you need to redo your BPR at implementation? So that was a multifaceted question there.
Multi-layers. Let's see which side of the Rubik's Cube do I want to solve first. Let's start with the question of, should you do it before you even select the system? I think it can be in parallel, for sure. It can be before. The question is, how far before system selection or during system selection? I don't think is the issue there. I like to turn it around, if you will, to say that I think it's imperative that companies do a BPR in some way, shape, or form before a system is implemented within their timeline. Because again, the idea of putting your same processes in the new system, you may be doing bad things faster, is basically the problem there. So doing the BPR either before selection or concurrent with selection, I don't think is a bad idea in either case. I think it depends on the time frame in which the client wants to go live with their current system.
Great. All right, looks like another one here. We think that we have pretty good processes in place. How do you help someone like us if our processes are already pretty sound?
The easiest way to say that is, for those of you who are familiar with the lean philosophies of identifying waste and removal of waste to produce continuous flow. Part of the lean methodology is you're always trying to reach pursuit of perfection. It's continuous improvement. It is a journey. Kaizen is which is a term within lean, which is continuous improvement. It is a continuous pursuit of perfection. So even if your processes are good now, there's always room for improvement. And that could be a localized process that's working well that may interface either upstream or downstream with other processes that aren't optimized. So it's all about seeing the full picture from beginning to end, and understanding even a local optimization can be expanded throughout that value chain of events from beginning to end, so that there's always the opportunity for process improvement.
All right. Again, if you have any other questions, please go ahead and submit those. If something comes up after the fact, Mike and I can both be reached. Our emails are on the screen there, or feel free to give us a call. Up here, it looks like one other one came through. How long does the typical BPR project last?
It pretty much lasts until I get tired, is the longest. But the better answer actually is, depends on the size of the organization. Here I've given two examples of different sized organizations, a small one and I would say a medium-sized one, where in the small company's case, and it typically is the case, typically about a week for current state and a week for future state. For medium-sized companies, 2 weeks for current state, 2 weeks for future state. For larger companies, I would say 3 weeks on each side for the current and future states. The one thing I do say is that the future states take a little bit shorter time to put together, because we've identified at very painstaking detail all of the inefficiencies in the current state. So it's really easy to call those out and say, we don't want to do those anymore. How do we just remove those, eradicate those completely? How do we systematize that tribal knowledge and get that more in a standardized way? So typically the future states take a little bit quicker, and I mean by hours per day, but for a small organization, 2 weeks. For a medium-sized organization, 4 weeks. For a large organization, I would say 6 weeks.
Great. So with that, I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're right at that half-hour mark. So again, any questions, please go ahead and reach out to Mike or myself directly. We'd happy to talk more, answer any questions you may have. And we appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. Mike, thank you for leading us through this presentation, and we look forward to seeing everyone down the road on future webcasts.
Thanks, everyone.